Welcome to Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And today's episode is number 16 of the Instagram Live, where I'll put up a question during the week and get people to ask questions and I'll answer them in this episode. And then it's released, as you'll be hearing, on the Thursday released podcast episode. We've got 2, 4, 6, 7 questions today. But if you have a question and you've tuned in already, feel free to chuck it down the bottom. And there'll be people pretty with bated breath waiting to hear if the feud between Ashley James and Peter Donegan continues or not. And I can assure you that it does continue. There is a question from one of them or more of a statement. So that'll be about number 5 coming up. So stay tuned for that one. But the first question is from Tom Lynch. And he said, do you ever struggle to keep the motivation levels up, particularly in winter and stuff like that? So absolutely I do, because I haven't found anyone who hates winter more than I do. It is just the worst season that exists. I struggle to find a positive out of it. Like, that's when snow happens, but you go to the snow and it's not all the crack up to be. It's cold and wet and takes ages to drive there. Super expensive. They usually have to make the snow, and it turns out like ice. There's just, I can't think of a good thing about winter, except maybe that's when the footy season is, but that's about all. I'd be happy for the footy season to be not in winter. Like, as much as I love landscaping, I hate it I don't hate it, but it's very difficult doing it in winter. And I imagine it's no different for employees as it is for employers, because the employees hate it because they've got to go out and get wet and cold and miserable. But yeah, employers have got to pay for people to have a rain day, and everything takes longer. So, like, if there's a bit of it could be half a mil of rain and it just turns everything to mud. So then it takes an extra 45 minutes at the end of the day to clean everything up because it's turned into mud. So, yeah, I could talk for probably 45 minutes about how much I hate winter. So, I certainly do struggle with the motivation when that comes around. But then, as soon as it finishes, then you've got spring, and I couldn't be more excited about spring. And then, because everything starts growing, and then summer is my favorite season. So, I mean, autumn's pretty good as well. So, yeah, 75% of the time I'm ecstatic, but I do struggle. But that's the only thing that makes me struggle with motivation. Every now and then we might do a massive job, and if I know I'm not making money on it, you're obviously going to struggle with motivation for that, because that is why you do work most of the time. But yeah, mostly it's just the cold weather is what I do not enjoy at all. I'm well aware that it's a month away. So, and the difficult thing is I follow a lot of North American podcasts and accounts on Instagram, and they're obviously on the opposite side of the world. So they're going from spring now going into summer. So they're all getting excited about how great it's going to be. And here we are 4 weeks out from winter. So that's difficult as well. But yeah. And good evening to Wazza from Curse. It's good to see local people tuning in as well. And I did see a question from Dan Foreman, just making sure that my name wasn't Joe Boner, as it has appeared on the captions at times. It just definitely is Joel Barnett. Hopefully I said that clearly. Next question is from Terra Landscapes Northland, so from across the ditch. What's the best step-by-step procedure you use to lay down antique cobbles? So he's just talking about the individual 100 by 100 cobbles there. So the ones we've done, I think I've only done twice, could be 3 times, but they've all been, the cobbles have been varied in thickness between 20 and 60 mil. So we've poured a concrete slab and then done just our normal mortar mix, and just laid them individually on a mortar bed, because there's 40 mil variance in the thickness of the cobble, so you can't go with a tile adhesive. What I would find ideal would be having them all calibrated, so they're all, say, 20 mil or 30 mil, however thick you need to be, whether they're being used for a vehicle access or not. And then if you can use tile adhesive, that's the best way to go about it. But there is also a way of Marpe have got a particular system that they use, which is almost like a dry mix. So it could be similar to what Cam Fred was talking about the other episode, about how he uses a dry mix and then puts a slurry on there and taps it down. I think it's similar to that. So it's like a cobblestone for driveways. And you can use that with varying thickness ones, but because I hadn't used it before and I was laying these cobbles on a driveway, I didn't want to do it for the first time on a driveway on, like, I think it was 120 square meters. So it's not something that you really want to practice on. So you'd rather, if you're going to use that Marpe system, you'd want to practice it on a smaller section. Well, that's what I would want to do anyway. But yeah, Marpe are extremely helpful. So that's who I did reach out to actually, and they gave it a suggestion just to get advice, but I decided to go with what I know, and there hasn't been any issues with it. And it's been down for probably 2 years, I reckon. Yeah, so far so good. But yeah, but I think an important thing to keep in mind when you're laying cobbles is how slow it is to do. I did see that Brooks Blooms, so Brooks was on the episode that's just last week. They're doing a massive job. I think it's the biggest one they've done, possibly. But it's got a massive driveway with a fan cobble pattern. So the cobbles are shaped in a fan and cut in to do the old school fan pattern that you used to see in Europe. But I think they got those from Gatherco, which they don't provide much in Victoria, but they're already in the fan pattern and they've all been cut in. So that's a pretty good way to do it as well. And it looks pretty good. Like you could see that they're all exactly the same clones of each other, but once you grout it, you wouldn't notice the difference anyway if you had done it individually. So that's not a bad way to go. So there's some things that are pre-done that can actually be just as good as if you do it individually. But what I was saying was the important thing to keep in mind when you're laying cobbles is how slow they are. So the job that we did, I allowed 1 cobble per minute per person, and it wasn't, they weren't laid that quick, so we didn't make any money on that one. So it's because you got to think about getting the cobbles out of wherever they are, like in the crate they were in, taking them over to where you're laying them, mixing mud, doing paste. You might accidentally lay some that aren't as straight as you'd like, so you might want to pull some up. There's all sorts of things you want to take into account. But yeah, you definitely make sure you allow more than a minute per cobble per person, depending on who your experience. Like I certainly laid quicker than that, but I'm the business owner, so I should be doing most things quicker than everyone else. Next question is from Craig Clark. So he's someone who I'm looking to get on in the future because he's worked for a couple of good businesses in his time. But his question was, do you have a business mentor or someone you discuss ideas about how to better improve the business and operations? So I don't have a business mentor or a coach, and I've never used one, and that could explain how the lack of success I've had in profitability for business. So it's whenever I tell someone, like they say, how's business going? Like, are you busy? You got much on? So yeah, we're booked out for 9 to 12 months all the time. I say, well, that's good. But it's very easy to be busy. It's not as easy to be profitable. And I'd rather be profitable than busy because I could just stay at home if I wanted to not make money. So I think having a mentor or a coach would have been a good idea. And it's I probably could still do it, but it's not. Yeah, I've never had one. There's certainly I talk to a lot of people in the industry, and so there's always things you're talking about business. Kurt O'Toole from Urban Elements Landscapes down in Geelong is probably someone I'll talk to more than anyone else about business. But we've been down here together, both worked together probably, 14 years ago, I reckon. No, longer. Yeah, so I've known him for a long time. So yeah, that's who I would talk to most about business. But there's also like now I'm starting to move into more design and construction, especially more design. I certainly talk to people who've got design businesses if I've got a question about what sort of type of employee I should put on or not. I'll reach out to someone who is in a position that I want to get into, or they're experiencing what I want to experience. And so Cam Hainsworth from Abcam Horticulture is coming up in this week's episode of the podcast, and he's looking to do that exact same thing. So he's got his business to a point where it is, and he's wanting to go to the next step. So he's wanting to talk to people who are at that level that he's wanting to get to. So that's a good thing to do. If you know where you're wanting to go, try and reach out to someone who has been or is at that position that you're wanting to get to. And then you can get advice and they can tell you what they did wrong when they did it so that you don't make the same mistakes. But yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea. But I'm someone who, like a lot of businesses talk about how they feel lonely. Like it can be lonely running your own business, but I like that side of things. Like I'm happy being, not relying on other people to my own detriment, but yeah, you do what you want to do. So I've never felt lonely running a business because there's people there. If I want to reach out, I can reach out to them, but I'm happy doing it the way I do it. And for better or worse, the way I do it is without mentors and coaches. Probably for worse, but that's just, that's how I do it. Next question is from Cassie Woodgo. What percentage are you currently putting on the different elements that go into a job? So I didn't mean to put these two after each other, but that's sort of continuing on from that. To work out pricing for a job, I've worked out how much I need to charge, but I've never thought enough about percentage, like adding a profit margin on top of that. So that probably explains, why I might struggle financially, is because if you're just quoting enough to cover all the materials and the wages, and like if you're covering everything that you have to spend within a year, like if you thought of everything, then if your expenses on a job are the same as the amount you quoted, then that's fine. You can keep doing that forever, and that's kind of what we're at. But you're never going to grow, or if something goes wrong, that's when you're in a bit of strife. So if you're not making profit on top of it, that's where you can have issues. So it's something I'm doing more and more. Like I'm still learning a lot, even after being in business for 14 years. But yeah, I'm not putting enough on the quotes that I do, and so I think it's working out better now. But then the tricky thing is, like I said before, if you've got 9 to 12 months worth of work booked in, then things that I'm making changes to now don't come into effect for 9 to 12 months. And by that time, something else has happened, which I think I need to change. So then I'll make the change. And then we're 9 to 12 months out. So if you start thinking about things, you try and implement them straight away. And don't be afraid to increase the prices, because especially like if you do get to a point where you're booked out many months in advance, you're better off adding to a quote. And if you miss out, it's no stress because you can quote another project. But yeah, you want to make money. So and in terms of a percentage, I don't know if there's certainly not an industry average that I'm aware of. And like I know that I've heard someone say that if a landscaper is making 10 or 15% profit margin on a project, they're doing well, but then pool builders are more around the 30%. So there's a lot more profit margin to be had within pool building. So I guess around the 10 to 15%, but that's on top of absolutely everything. So, but yeah, you just need to work out, but it's different for every person. So you just need to work out how much you want to make, and don't worry so much about what other people are charging, and then charge that amount. Next question is from Peter Donegan. There should be a new poll. Option A, Ashley James wishes he was Peter Donegan. Option B, there is no option B. So that was in response to a poll I put up about who would win a battle between Peter Donegan and Ashley James. And Peter Donegan won. It was a tight contest. It was 55%, 45%. But Peter Donegan came out on top of that. He did share it on his stories, but that didn't change the result because he was already winning when he did that. So to be continued. I don't know if I'll use that poll, but it's a good suggestion. Next question is from Rossi 777. When quoting jobs, what is the going hourly rate for an experienced qualified landscaper and for a landscape labourer? So that's something I've struggled with. And again, it's like I hate giving answers like this, but it's different for every business. Because I know what I pay myself is less than what landscapers are getting in Melbourne for working for some businesses. So that's pretty insane about how much some people are getting as an employee. I don't know if they're working weekends or what's involved with that, but yeah, it's pretty crazy. But there's no like, and so what you need to pay someone is obviously going to depend on their experience. I've never had any labourers on, so I can't say what it would be like, what they should be getting paid. Whenever I've had anyone on for like casually, I just look at what the casual rate is and just pay them that, like in the award. So that's all I've ever done is just follow the award. And then like when I start apprentices on it, if they're better than average, I'll pay them more than average. And then if they start doing things good all the time, I'll put their wage up. So I just do it gradually, but that's when I have them as apprentices and then they become qualified. So again, it's going to be different if you're hiring a qualified person. And it's much like AFL, I reckon, in any sporting competition. You're going to be paying someone who comes to you from another company more than you would if you started them with your company. That's the majority of the time. That's how it will just work out. Because when you're looking to put someone on, you've got a need that you want to fill. So you're more likely to pay more for that. But if you started them as an apprentice, then they just gradually build up and gradually their pay keeps going up to a point where they might reach their peak. And then I think so. Another thing that I have never done is that other people have done, which is a great idea, is having sort of incentives for the employees. I found it a bit tricky. Like early days when it was just me and one guy, if we made a good profit on a job, I would give him a fair old bonus because it was just the two of us. But then it's tricky when there's more people and it kind of gets diluted a little bit. But yeah, I've heard a lot of people have it saying that over a year they've got like a certain bonus kitty amount. And then if everything goes well, they'll get that whole kitty. But then if they make mistakes, like if let's say they smashed a mirror on a vehicle, the cost to fix that will come out of that kitty. So then they'll get less. So that kind of makes them more accountable. It's not much of an incentive, that one. But then there's other companies who have incentives per project. Like if they make a certain amount over a profit percentage, then they'll get that broken up. So so the hourly rate isn't the be all and end all. You can certainly have incentives that will help your employees as well. But yeah, it will vary so crazily how much some people get. Like there's people who are getting paid a lot more than my employees, but then they're also getting paid a lot more than other people's. So and then there'll be definitely people who are way less skilled than my guys who are getting paid way more than them. But that's just because they're working in a different area, or their boss is better than my guy's boss. But there's just so many different variables that come into it. It's not something that matters. Like it doesn't matter what other people are paying their employees. You need to pay them what you can afford to, and so what's sustainable, and what is going to keep getting work done at the level that you want to get done. Dan Foreman said, it's easier to understand Peter when he writes things down. Well, I've seen some of the messages he sent me. I still don't understand what he said in them, and even though it's written in English. And he also said, you should be able to pay them less if they eat tuna in the truck. Could not agree more. That's quite a stench that comes out. And then the worst thing is I'll leave the can in there and a bit of the juice. The tuna juice will get out, the brine, spill that on that. Well, I've done that myself before actually, but yes, it's not ideal. It's you don't want to be smelling that, especially on a hot day. But luckily, well, there's a positive for winter coming up. If you spill tuna, it won't stink as much as if it's in summer. Now, Leaf by Leaf's got a question. Have you noticed a bump in the listeners, viewers since the garden show? Well, the last two episodes are the most popular, but I don't know whether it's because of the garden show or just it's just been growing gradually. And it depends who the guests are. Because if I got, I don't know who I could get on who no one would be interested in, but if I had someone on who no one is interested in, people don't listen, like whenever I have a supplier on, they're the lowest listened, downloaded episodes. But I had Cam Frieden on, who was kind of the first stonemason. I had the fella George from Matipo Landscapes in the UK. He's a bit of a stonemason, but Cam was definitely the first, bona fide stonemason. That's all he did. But yeah, his episode was the most popular, and then the one with Brooke from Brooks Blooms, who's just gone, that's now been the second most popular. So it's just been growing gradually, and it's not like every episode is bigger than the previous one. So it grows very slowly, but it's still continuing to grow. And I don't reckon the garden show would have made much of a difference. It could be 10 people. But something else that makes the podcast grow is people who start listening to it at the start. A lot of them will still listen to it, and then other people have been joining along the way. And then there'll be other people who find it. Like I still get messages every couple of weeks, someone who just discovered the podcast. So then they've got 105 back catalogue episodes to go back and listen to. And not every episode is good for every person. And like I don't care if people don't want to listen to every episode, because there's plenty of other podcasts in the world to listen to. But so that's what the good thing is. You can go through, and I have a variety of people on there. You can go through and choose who you want to listen to and who you don't. The other thing I would say about that is you could learn something valuable from someone who you wouldn't think you would learn something valuable from. So it's sometimes worth listening to ones you wouldn't think would be that interesting, but then you might be surprised. And the last question is from Cam from Abcam Horticulture, who, as I said, is this week's guest coming up. So today's date, as I'm recording this, is the 30th of April. So his was out on the 30 days, so September, April, June, on the 1st of May. And his question was, do you prefer designing and building your own work or building someone else's design? So there's a great question to finish off with, because it's a tricky one, because I love doing both. So obviously I like creating your own gardens, and I find that when I do them, I'm more likely to make changes to it as we go, which I think will benefit the garden and the entire design. So I sort of bite my tongue a little bit more working for other designers, because they've got they're obviously almost always more experienced than me. So I just want to kind of stay in my lane and just do what I think should be done, which is build it to the way they've designed it. Because I might think, you should do this because of X, Y, Z, but then they could say, well, it's because of ABC that we didn't, and I didn't know that because I haven't learned anything about design. So I'm a bit gun shy about suggesting things for other designers. I'll certainly think it in my head and talk to my guys about it, saying I would probably do this. But I certainly enjoyed doing my own gardens because of that, and there's going to be a lot more of them coming up. Because, as I said, that we're booked out so far in advance, but a lot of the designs that we've been doing are starting to get close to being built. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. But everything I've learnt about design is from building other people's gardens, so other designers' gardens. So I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities to do that, because that's anything I can do, any skills like the garden show build, anything I've done good in design is purely because of other people's designs. So I've just absorbed it all in as we built it, or as I've seen it on Instagram or anywhere else that you see designs like magazines or just walking in the streets. So yeah, I think so. There's a lot of people who don't do, like, if they do design, they don't do other people's, like if they do design and construction, they won't build other people's other designs. And I think they're missing out, and it's kind of stunting their creative growth by doing that. Because if you've learned design and then you're just doing your own gardens, you're not learning anything from that point on. Like, you will learn, like, there's always little things you pick up along the way, and everyone can have Instagram, but I think it's interesting. It's good to just be able to see the different way people do things, even just presentations of designs. So as I've said a few times, I'm always looking for continuous improvement. So that's a good way to continuously improve, is to see the different way other people do things. And I think that's the same for construction employees. It's not a bad thing to go and work for someone else, so that you can see the different way people do things. And the same with maintenance. If you're working for someone else, you could learn something different. So definitely benefits of spreading your wings and working for other people and building other people's designs. So I like doing both. So if I had to pick one, that is a tough question. But if I had to pick one, I would probably build other people's designs. Because I still think I'm learning a lot, and they come up with better ideas than what I do. But that is the last question for this evening. So thank you very much again to everyone who submitted one. And 2 of those questions came during the week before I even put the question box up. So if you have a question come to mind that you want answered on the podcast, you can just send me a message at any time, and I'll add it to my list and then read it out on next Sunday. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for everyone who tuned in and asked a question. And Cam Hainsworth from Abcam Horticulture is out this week. And we'll see you next week.